Midnight on Route 66 is a kind of silence that hums at the edges. The desert's so flat the earth feels concave, headlights painting a tunnel that never ends. That's my office. My name's Ray Delaney, tow truck operator, night shift, 30 miles between ghosts of gas stations. People think of the Mother Road like a souvenir, chrome diners, jukebox dreams, but out here it's just asphalt and mirages. I haul what's left after the dreams burst. Engines cooked dry, tires shredded, drivers drunk on nostalgia and heat. Most nights it's simple work. Hook 'em, drag 'em to Lorna's garage, fill out the paperwork, maybe catch breakfast at dawn. But every driver I knew before me repeated the same warning. Never answer a breakdown at mile 239 after 3 a.m. Some superstition about the endless ride. I laughed at it for years. Then dispatch called, 2:57 a.m., voice crackling like metal through sand. Unit 9, you got a code 13, car still running, driver unresponsive, mile 239. They said still running twice. I turned the wheel west into the dark, told myself it was just another payout, and drove toward the hum that already knew my name. Desert towing is a job built on patience and heat sickness. There's no quick rescue out here, only long stretches of empty highway and the strange company of your own dashboard lights. You measure life in quarter tanks and coffee burns. The CB radio bleeds tiny stories from truckers 100 miles away. Somebody's flat in Winslow, a jackrabbit the size of a dog, an old-timer swearing he saw taillights floating above the sand. It all blends into static after a while. Most nights, silence is friendlier than voices. When there's no traffic, you start to hear the soft hiss the desert makes, like the ground itself sighing under a memory it can't let go. That's when the old rules learned from other drivers creep back. Don Garvey taught me the big ones years ago over a plate of diner eggs. Rule 1, never stop at mile 239 after 3 a.m. Rule 2, don't check the rear view twice. Rule 3, kill your headlights before you exit the truck. If something wants to be found, it'll glow on its own. Every rule has a story, and every story ends with someone's rig left idling on the shoulder come sunrise. I used to think the rules were just a way to spook rookies. A community built on bragging rights and bad coffee needs its myths. But as the clock on my dash crept past 2:56 that night, the air inside the cab went heavy, and even the radio static seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere ahead, the highway shimmered brighter than my headlights could reach, a mirage that refused to vanish. I remember thinking the desert finally made its first mistake. It showed me something real. The coordinates pointed halfway between Clovis Junction and an abandoned rest stop where the neon used to spell "Eat Good." When the sign died, the people left too. All that lingered were bones of motels and weeds curling through asphalt. At 2:59 a.m., I saw it. Hazard lights dim but pulsing, a slow amber heartbeat breaking the dark. A 2008 Chevy Malibu sat sideways across the shoulder, hood lifted like a jaw mid-scream. Engine hummed with a polite, steady purr. No headlights, no driver. I pulled the truck alongside and hit my flashers, boxes of lights sliding over the empty road like dancers who'd lost their partners. I called over the CB. Dispatch, this is Unit 9 at 239. Got one vehicle active, driver not present. Only static answered, a low copper hiss that licked my ear like feedback. When I tried again, the line clicked and repeated my own voice. Unit 9, active vehicle, driver not present. Then the channel died. I approached with the heavy flashlight that doubles as a weapon in stories we tell each other on breaks. The driver's door hung open, dome light flickering every few seconds, beating slow as a pulse. Driver's seat empty, passenger seat empty. A half-finished cup of gas station coffee in the holder. It steamed once when the breeze hit, though the air was cool. I leaned in to check VIN numbers and froze. The gauges danced, even though I hadn't touched the ignition. Tack needle twitching, gas line bouncing between E and F like it couldn't decide if the car was alive or dead. The stereo played a single looped bar of a song, words undone by static. It cut mid-beat, started again, same half-second. Behind me, the dust shifted, a swirl against the crosswind, wrong direction. I turned my light and caught the briefest motion inside the car. shape dry as wind-blown paper sliding across the back seat. When I blinked, it was gone. Only the seatbelt straps swayed, ticking against the doorframe, keeping rhythm with something that wasn't wind. Hooking the car was pure reflex. Chain, lever, hydraulic groan. The Chevy's tires rolled willingly, as though happy for the company. That should have calmed me, but the sound it made wasn't rubber on asphalt. It was softer, almost like breath. Half a mile into the return haul, I caught movement in the mirrors. Backseat shadow, quick as blink. I told myself it was play from the hazard lights reflecting off the windshield. Then, the reflection opened its eyes. I yanked the cab mirror down. Empty back seat. Checked again. Nothing. But the smaller tow mirror outside caught a pale outline sitting straight behind me, hands folded, polite as a passenger waiting for arrival. The figure faced forward, hair shifting slightly as if in wind I couldn't feel. When my headlights hit a road sign, the glass cleared, and it was gone, just the green glow of mile 239 scrolling past again. The radio popped, sharp enough to sting my ear. A voice bled through the static. Unit 9, confirm recovery. Copy, I said automatically. This is Ray Delaney returning to town. Static again, but not random, breathing its own rhythm. The shape of words crawled up through the noise. Delaney, Delaney, you're late again. My fingers jammed the dial off. The hum didn't stop. The words slid into the low drone of the engine like transmission noise, repeating every few seconds in faint mechanical mimicry. At one point, the cab temperature dropped hard enough that the dashboard frostlight winked itself on. When the windshield fogged from inside, a single handprint formed beside the defroster vent, palm facing outward, fingers long and uncertain. I leaned on the gas until the highway bent toward the faint halo of town lights. When I finally dared glance at the mirror again, the handprint was gone, but on my rear window, dust traced 5 perfect lines still gliding backward against the motion of the truck, as if something inside hadn't realized we'd already left. Morning came as a thin smear of orange over the desert, light too weak to feel real. Lorna's garage squatted at the edge of Gallup like an afterthought. Faded signage, tin roof, enough rust to prove experience. She'd taught me half of what I know, and the other half she made sure I still doubted. The Chevy sat on her lift, purring softly, hood up, heart still beating long after it should have seized. Lorna wiped her hands on a rag that was mostly holes. Ran code checks, she said. Engine's cold, but the tach reads 800 RPM. You ever seen a dead car breathing? I told her what I'd found. About the missing driver, the hazard lights, the looped radio. Left out the part where my mirrors started mimicking me. She listened without interrupting, eyes flat steel gray. You're not the first to drag in one that won't quit. She pointed to a junk pile behind the bay, half a dozen shells, some decades old. Engines that never shut up. Route 66 doesn't know it's been retired. Sometimes it keeps commuters later than it should. Haunted cars? I laughed, too high. She shrugged. Highways remember every accident they ever saw. All that rubber, blood, and heat baked right into the asphalt. If enough of it lines up, maybe something starts replaying. She killed the overhead lights. The Chevy's dashboard still glowed softly in the shadow. Blue radio backlight flickered words across the frequency screen. 239 forever. Lorna looked at me once more. Finish their trip if you have to, but don't drive their road after dark. Outside, the wind pushed against the bay doors, bringing the smell of burnt ozone and something else, a faint exhaust note from no visible car, idling just long enough to let me know the highway was still awake. The day bled into evening without ceremony. I drove loops between callouts that never materialized, dispatch silent except for a few bursts of static. By 10, the road shimmered beneath the heat it hadn't earned, air too still for wind, yet dust pushed in lazy spirals across the shoulder. When I cut the AC, the cab hissed, a whispering that sounded too much like breathing on the other end of a phone line. Halfway to Clovis Junction, my CB clicked itself on. No channel light, no human voice, just the low electric hum I'd heard from the Chevy that morning. Every pulse came in threes, same interval, same pitch. It took me a minute to realize it was matching my heartbeat. I turned the knob to kill it, and the engine RPM rose on its own. The truck lurched forward even with my foot off the pedal. In park, it still crept, like the gears admired motion more than obedience. Over the hum, faint words began to surface, threaded into the white noise like a half-tuned station. Brake 9, 239, rollover. I knew that call. It was the one that sent me there. But now another voice answered, a weary version of my own. Copy that, Unit 9 en route. I slammed the CB silent and yanked both wires free. The unit went dead, yet the whisper continued, now through the window seals, a low resonance running parallel with the tires. An oncoming rig flashed lights to warn me, and for an instant its entire trailer was glass, reflecting my truck back at me. Not one, but two Ray Delaneys, in separate cabs, both gripping the wheel, both mouthing the same string of curses. The reflection winked out with the oncoming beam. The radio stopped. Only the desert remained, vast and patient. I didn't breathe until the green glow of mile 239 slid past again, carving its number through the dark, like it belonged there long before asphalt learned its shape. By 11:30, I'd persuaded myself to finish one last sweep, pure routine, like shaking a lock to prove it's latched. For 40 miles, the horizon stayed empty, except for heat ghosts that looked like rising water. Then, one by one, pinprick headlights erupted ahead, floating low over the highway. I slowed, expecting an accident scene, but the lights aligned in perfect formation, half a mile of cars pacing the center line, engines humming in absolute synchronicity. No brake lights, no drivers. I rolled alongside at a cautious crawl. Each vehicle glided forward exactly 65 miles an hour, the same dust patterns swirling around their tires. Wind should have carried exhaust toward me, but the smell came cold and metallic, like lightning trapped in a jar. I radioed, forgetting the cord was cut. As I pulled ahead of the first car, its interior, something caught the moonlight. Shapes moving inside glass, not reflections, but flickers of motion. Figures frozen mid-gesture behind windshields, mouths half open. Every face identical. Mine. I slammed the brakes. The convoy didn't react. One after another, their headlights brightened to blinding white, bathing the cab in static glare. The truck's diagnostics spiked red. Instruments screamed nonsense. 0 RPM, 180 miles an hour. Fuel full, then empty.
Then, like a continuous note, the mechanical voice blended together. Then, like a conductor lowering a baton, silence struck. The other cars dropped to stillness. Headlights out, engines off. Only my truck kept idling. Every mirror showed an empty road. But outside, I could still feel engines turning under the asphalt, a low vibration pressing up through the soles of my boots. The glow of my dashboard pulsed once for every phantom rotation, syncing again with my heartbeat. I shifted into drive out of pure superstition. The vibration followed, almost content. Behind me, inconspicuous as a shadow, a single pair of taillights blinked back to life and began to follow. I didn't mean to answer. The mic was still unplugged, cord wrapped like a severed snake under the dash. Yet at 12:07, the speaker crackled alive anyway, voice breathless and small. "Anybody copy, please?" I froze, fingers suspended over the steering wheel. The sound was too human to ignore. "This is Ray Delaney," I said, before realizing the words left my mouth. "Who's out there?" Static shivered. Then a girl's voice, quiet, maybe 16. They won't stop driving. I can see the lights forever and can't get out." Her sentence rode a layer of hiss I recognized. That same pulse pattern beating under everything. The cadence of tires on asphalt. "What mile marker?" I asked. She hesitated. "Mile 239. It's always 239. The fog outside my windshield thickened as if listening. When the next flash of lightning hit the highway, a second voice whispered through the channel, an exact copy of hers but pitched lower, dragging. "Turn around, Ray." "Where are you exactly?" I pressed. Another pause. This one felt deliberate. "I was in a crash with my parents," she said. "Summer of 73.
Route closed after that for repairs. We never made it off the road. You hear me now because you're driving the same lines." I stared at the mic in disbelief. This was someone's ghost story bleeding through shortwave, surely. "Can you help me?" Her voice cracked, static swelling like surf. "They said if a living driver takes us west, we can stop circling." The air inside the cab shifted, a cold seatbelt click beside me. I turned. No one. But condensation bloomed on the passenger window, fresh and wet. Letters traced themselves through the mist. W-E-S. The radio fell silent. Only the faint smell of ozone remained. And beneath that, something sweeter. Gasoline over cheap perfume and dust, lingering as if my new passenger had already settled in. I drove until the horizon burned gray, half convinced no map could hold me anymore. The girl's last word, west, looped in my skull. The compass on the dash spun lazy circles, confused whether the desert even had directions. When the headlights caught a reflective sign, I squinted, expecting salvation. The green letters read, Mile 239. The same marker, the same oil stain on the shoulder. Heat slithered from the asphalt, whispering like a crowd too small to see. The Chevy I'd towed that first night sat angled exactly where I'd found it, hood up again, engine murmuring steady as breath. Only this time, my own tow truck idled behind it. Not a tow truck, a perfect duplicate. Paint scratched the same, license plate mirrored forward. Its hazard lights blinked in counter time to mine, like two clocks arguing. I stepped out, gravel crunching in rhythm with the idling motors. The air tasted ionized, metallic. When I brushed dust from the door letters, my hand met cold metal embossed faintly with new text beneath the paint. Engine KO97, the same call sign welded on my truck upstairs. From the CB speaker of the twin vehicle, her voice leaked through, softer now, calm. "You found the beginning," she said. "They built this mile too many times. Every year the road ghosts add a copy." Cars, half buried down the embankment, flickered their headlights on in unison. Engines coughed awake, one after another, each beam locked on me. The air seemed to contract, shrinking the desert to the size of a room. "You have to tow us home," the girl whispered through both cab speakers at once. "For the line to close, one driver leads." The hood of the nearest car trembled, releasing a sigh like lungs filling after decades. I turned back toward my truck. Inside, the passenger door hung open, seatbelt already drawn across nothing, waiting. The air throbbed with engine noise, yet the highway stayed motionless, a photograph that refused to fade. I climbed into my cab and hit the ignition. It answered before the key turned. The radio sputtered to life, no light on the dial, and from its speaker came the wet grind of gears. A voice pushed through, low and metallic, syllables rubbing against each other like steel plates. "Unit 9, confirm, transmission." I swallowed. "Dispatch, I need help. There are copies out here." Static chewed through the reply, then the shape of words again. "Proceed to way station, 239 west. Recover, origin signal." Origin of what? The voice lagged, doubling itself. origin of you. The night tilted slightly as my headlights carved a path through sand devils. 20 minutes later, the road opened onto a paved lot littered with scales and rusted trailers. On the roof of the way station, a radio tower blinked one exhausted red light. Inside the building, every window glowed pale green with screens, some new, some older than me, each looping fragments of CB traffic. My voice peppered every feed. Unit 9 en route. Unit 9, copy. Unit 9, any survivors? On a counter sat a dozen handheld recorders, spun tubes clicking every few seconds. Tiny speakers leaked whispers of long-dead drivers trapped in perpetual self-check. They weren't dispatchers, they were echoes. Messengers caught between miles, repeating forever because the roads still remembered their coordinates. The tower outside moaned under the wind. When I stepped nearer, its cables thrummed, and from the vibration another phrase formed, unmistakably mine. Someone has to keep the line clear. Somewhere out beyond the scales, every abandoned car answered the frequency at once, headlights flaring alive, pointing down a single invisible lane aimed directly west. As they brightened, my truck's radio whispered one last directive. Hook up 9, line needs a leader. The way station lights dipped, humming in synchrony with the silent engines outside. I stared at the line of resurrected cars arranged nose to tail along the shoulder. Each wore the dull glow of exhaustion, chrome dulled, windshields clouded with years of dust. In the truck's reflection, they all looked new. The radio crackled again, but now there was laughter woven through the static. My own voice cut into pieces, layered over itself. Hook up 9, line needs a leader. I stepped down onto the asphalt. Every hair on my arms lifted. The air felt charged, threaded with invisible current. I reached for the tow cable, just to prove the world still obeyed physics. It sparked where steel met steel, hissed like rain on a stove. The car nearest me, same make, same dents, rolled an inch forward without touching gas or gravity. Its engine deepened to match mine, two hearts sinking. Lorna's rule whispered at the back of my skull, never tow from 2:39 after 3 a.m. I figured I'd already broken more sacred things. The hook caught, lock pins sliding into place with an audible click that somehow sounded satisfied. Far down the road, red taillights blinked awake one by one, dominoes vanishing into the night until a 1,000-mile chain of motion glimmered like vein fire. In the passenger seat, the girl's outline cohered in dashboard reflection, hair lifting as if underwater. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Someone has to pull us home. Where's home? I asked. West, she said simply, and the sound carried through every speaker in the cab, echoes overlapping from 1,000 radios. I shifted into drive. The convoy lurched gently behind, a hum that felt both mechanical and alive. The tow cable drew tight, glowing faintly, symbols crawling across it like words I couldn't read. For an instant, the desert went silver, sand flaring into polished glass that showed nothing, no horizon, no stars, only the sheen of identical trucks following my lead into whatever distance waited past the map. The western sky wasn't dark so much as empty, an inkwell without reflection. Every mile dropped another degree from reality. Gravel gave way to smooth glass, then to light itself stretched so thin it trembled. The convoy stayed close, identical shadows pairing off in my mirrors. Each headlight burned a little dimmer, until the glow resembled constellations scattering behind a slow-moving planet. The girl's voice came through the CB, quiet and even now. You're almost through. Through to what? Where the road forgets the living. Ahead, the signage melted, letters peeling from aluminum, fluttering upward like sparks. Speedometers flattened. Inside the cab, gauges bled sideways, numbers turning into faint handwriting, names. Lorna's, mine. A half dozen I didn't recognize, everyone pulsing faint amber before fading away. I tried remembering where I'd been heading before the first call. Couldn't do it. The truck smelled like dust and rain, the scent right before a storm that never arrives. When I looked at the girl, she wasn't quite solid anymore. The seatbelt cut through her outline, the highway passing directly through her ribs. "Why me?" I asked. She smiled without looking back. "Because you kept answering." The grade tilted uphill. A rim of light appeared on the horizon. Not sunrise, but something older, silver and curved like a coin edge. Behind, the convoy began to thin. One car disassembled into raw glow. Another folded inward and vanished. Each disappeared with a sound like an old film reel ending. Flap, hiss, gone. I pressed the pedal down. The dash clock read 3:01, then blinked out. The last thing I remember before the horizon consumed the truck was the girl reaching for my hand, her touch running colder than metal. She whispered, "Keep driving, Ray. The rest will follow." And we drove on, west through the nothing, until even the weight of motion stopped meaning anything at all. The story floated through the diner radios 2 mornings later, buried between weather and baseball scores. State Highway Patrol is investigating a tow truck found idling near mile 239 on historic Route 66. Engine was running, fuel tank full, doors locked, no sign of the driver. Authorities identified the vehicle as belonging to Raymond Delaney of Gallup, New Mexico. Family reports he'd been working alone on a night call. Lorna sat at the counter, hands still greasy from the morning's first job, listening as the short broadcast repeated itself. A half-dozen locals leaned closer just because bad news tastes stronger with coffee. She didn't speak until the commercial swept in. "That truck was cold when they found it," she murmured. "Battery dead, but RPM gauge still moving." No one answered. The waitress kept pouring. Outside the window, the highway shimmered under heat rising off the sand. Lorna could swear she saw taillights far out in the rippling distance, 2 tiny red dots dragging a silver glint westward in broad daylight, then gone. She closed the shop early that day, fig leaf excuse about heat exhaustion. When she locked the bay doors, she noticed Ray's ledger on her desk, open to a blank page that hadn't been there before. In fresh black ink, someone had written, "Unit 9, active line held." She ran her hand over the words. They stayed warm beneath her palm, pulsing once every few seconds, like a heartbeat still working somewhere out on the road. Every few months, a tourist posts a blurry photo online, headlights flaring in the desert darkness, a lone tow truck idling with no driver in sight. The captions change, but the coordinates never do. Mile 239, Route 66. Local deputies patrol the area, always find nothing except twin tire tracks pressed deep into hardened sand, one set newer than the other, as if the same truck keeps repeating its route. Drivers who stop claim the truck's CB whispers first, a dry voice like tape unraveling. "Brake check at 239. Keep your headlights off." Then the radio goes dead and the smell of ozone rolls through the cab. Every witness describes it the same way. A flash of red lights ahead, a shape of steel pulling something just beyond the reach of their beams. Some say Ray Delaney is still out there, stuck in the loop, leading the convoy west so nobody else has to. Others think the desert built itself a guardian, using what was left of him to keep the line of ghosts moving. Either way, mile 239 hums at night. You can feel it through the floorboards when your tires cross the painted marker, like highway concrete vibrating under a drumbeat from below. Lorna never drives that far anymore. She keeps the radio volume low at her shop, but sometimes when the signal's thin, she hears his voice cut through the natural static. "Line held, proceed to sunrise." She always answers the same, soft, respectful. "Copy that, 9. Stay safe out there." Morning wind pushes through her bay doors, rattling the empty lifts, and for a heartbeat she swears she smells diesel and desert rain. If you're ever driving west on Route 66 after midnight and your CB wakes on its own, don't answer. Keep your eyes forward, cut your lights, and let the engine hum. That convoy in the mirrors isn't traffic, it's memory, and it's only looking for a new driver to take the lead.